The previous video explained the concept of sewage. It is simply wastewater that has many contaminants. The water cannot be used directly for any purpose. So do we discard it? No, we mustn't do that. As sewage contains so many harmful impurities, we need to treat the water and only discard it when it's safe for disposal. So how is sewage treated? Let us have a look at the process in detail. The process begins with a primary treatment. Primary treatment is the first step. So what do you think will be removed in the first step? Imagine you're given a beaker of impure water which has soil, pebbles, plastic articles and other wastes. How will you start cleaning this water? You will first remove the bigger solid impurities manually and then think of processes like filtration and so on. That is what the primary step is. Removing the larger particles. And when the bigger particles get removed, then the gradual removal of smaller particles gets easier. So the first step is when the larger wastes are removed. This is done by passing the wastewater through a bar screen which appears something like this. Now imagine there are plastic bags, articles and other wastes which are present in the water. They get collected on one side as water is passed through this bar screen. That is what is done in the first step. Now it's time to remove impurities like sand or pebbles or grit which are present in the wastewater. This is done by passing the water very slowly in a large grit and sand removal tank. Here, the reduced speed of the incoming water helps in the smaller particles like sand and grit settle at the bottom. This helps in easy separation of sand and grit. Now the next step is when other impurities are allowed to settle down at the bottom. This is done by passing the water in the primary clarifier. What is a primary clarifier? It is simply a tank in which the wastewater is allowed to stand still for a few hours. This helps in separating the impurities that settle at the bottom of the tank. The settled impurities are collectively referred to as sludge. This sludge can be further sent for use. Of what use could this semi-solid slurry-like waste be? We know the sludge contains many impurities, but apart from only impurities, it can also contain many compounds and nutrients. These are of no use to us, but they can prove very useful for a specific type of bacteria. Yes, the anaerobic bacteria which carry out fermentation reactions are fed with the sludge. As a result, they carry out the fermentation process which is very useful. So what will be the product? It gives rise to biogas formation. This important product can then be used further for various applications. Now coming back to our wastewater, we have separated the sludge from it. This marks the end of the primary treatment. What next? Is our water clean enough to be discharged into a nearby water body? Not really. It's not yet completely clean. All we need to do is carry out a few more treatment steps. The first in the list is aeration. In this method, the water is passed in a tank. The bottom of the tank has many perforated pipes which release air bubbles as water enters the tank. Sometimes even stirrers are present in the tank that aid in the aeration process. The supply of air helps in the growth of good aerobic bacteria that can consume the remaining organic wastes. Now the water is passed into the secondary clarifier where it's again allowed to stand still for a long time. This helps in settling of the organic biomass, which means the microorganisms along with the decomposed products in the water settle down. This slurry is called the activated slurry. What do we do with this activated slurry? We can collect the biomass, dry it and add it to the soil. The dried organic matter on being added to the soil increases its nutrient content. But for collecting the activated slurry, we first need to collect water from the top. This water is now all set to enter the chlorine tank. As the name suggests, it's a tank in which chlorine is added into the water. But why do we need chlorine? Well, it acts as a disinfectant. If there are any harmful microbes still present in the water, then they will get easily killed. The effluent, which is the treated water, can now be discarded in the nearby water bodies. It is safe enough to enter the environment. When it is discharged into a sea or river, or even allowed to percolate into the ground, then the natural purification system takes care of the remaining contaminants by purifying it. This is how sewage water is treated before being released into the surroundings.